Hello, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. You're watching episode 20 of The Health Show, and tonight we're going to have Ali Jawaid MD, who has done groundbreaking work in the field of medicine, in the field of dementia specifically. And I'm going to be asking him key questions related to health, wellness, his research, what it's all about, why is it a game changer, everything about that, how, why did he pursue medicine, every single thing, what is his inspiration to what he's done, what he's doing currently, every single thing about him. Ali Javed is an enigma, and tonight I'm going to break that enigma for you guys. Thank you so much for joining, everybody. Hello. So he's just about to join in. And then we're going to begin. Hello, Ali. How are you?
Hi, Asad.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you? Can you hear me fine?
Yeah, you're audible. That's perfect.
I'm very good. How are you? How are you, Asad? Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
I feel
great.
like there's a lag going on between due to some internet connectivity issues, obviously. But I think we can continue like this. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. I can hear you fine. I can see you fine. So I hope should be good. Okay.
Perfect. So let's begin. First of all, Ali, thank you so much for coming on the live show. It's an honor on you, obviously. You're an honor for all the Pakistani people here. Tell us about yourself. Tell us who exactly Ali Javed is. How did Ali become this Ali that we see right now that has done groundbreaking work? Tell us what's your inspiration to begin with. Why did you pursue medicine? Everything about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for very kind and gracious words. I'm not even sure if I'm worthy of all that, but yeah, I mean it's always a pleasure to interact with like young dynamic people like yourself, and also like contributing in any way I can to, generally to academia or to science or just mental health issues related to especially the Pakistani community. So so yeah, I mean it's my pleasure to be here. Now going into the inspiration of like I think it was like a combination of curiosity and compassion, and like things which started actually I would say like I became a medical doctor because I wanted to learn more about the brain, and that was sort of my portal towards it. I've been fascinated about neuroscience, about brain from like very early on. Actually, not a lot of people know, and in the beginning, I always felt awkward to talk about it, but now, at some point, I think it's important to also tell people about your journey. So I actually had a neurological illness myself when I was like around 10, like 10 and a half. And it's called Guillain-Barré. It's very similar to multiple sclerosis. It's like a sort of like an ascending paralysis, and like a lot of people actually do not survive it. So I'm fortunate enough, mother's prayers and everything, that I'm still around. And the most interesting part was that so we are talking about mid 90s, when science had not advanced too much, and I was actually given a therapy which at that time used to be an experimental therapy to treat the disorder. It's called IVIG, intravenous immunoglobulins, which are routinely used for multiple, autoimmune disorders now. But at that time, it was like very experimental. So you can say that, like it was actually research and advancement in science and innovation, which kind of gave me like a new life. And, somehow when I was in the hospital, I was actually like, more than being depressed or sad or whatever, I was more fascinated about what was happening. So I was also lucky enough to that I was treated by a pediatrician who was like very encouraging. And every time he would come to examine me, they would be checking the vital signs, and I would be asking like 10 different questions. Okay, which nerve is this? And why do you check reflexes? And why do they work like this? What's normal? What caused this? When will I get that? Like, like many things. And I was given like not only a lot of answers, but I was given a lot of curiosity, you know, and that's where this journey started. And then I started reading up about, like, my elder brother went into medicine, so I was still in school, but I would read his books, then at some point, like, one of my cousins took psychology, so I was reading some psychology books, just randomly. Instead of reading storybooks, I was reading all of that. And then I just became more and more curious about it. And I think once I started with medicine, once I had my neurology rotation, I realized that actually not only did I actually could make a difference, not because I'm someone special, but there is actually just a lot which needs to be done in the field of neurology, or also, neuropsychiatry, which eventually I subspecialized in. Because, when you think about it, let's consider stroke, right? I mean, you see a patient with stroke, and there is nothing which the doctors can do other than, offering some kind of rehabilitation afterwards. You think about dementia, like we spend so much time, if you look at the neuropsychological battery, which doctors use, it takes hours to do that. We do MRIs, patients, their family members, they spend so much trying to get the diagnosis. And what do we do after diagnosis? We give the patient vitamin E, and we just prepare the family that it will get worse and worse, right? So we needed to do something about it. Again, think about, more neuropsychiatric illnesses like depression, right? I mean, it's, you think about it, it starts from like very minor incidents in life, it could start from like, some people, like they lose their parents, they undergo something traumatic, and then it starts with an incident from outside, eventually culminates into depression, and some people stay with that their whole life. Look at the loss of productivity it causes, like so many precious lives are lost. And still we don't have anything which can, prevent it or which can completely cure it. So I think it's a combination of the need, my curiosity, and then of course, the compassion of like helping people out, which eventually led to where I am right now.
Wow. Dr. Ali, I must say this has been an inspiration in itself. Your story of why you started and how you started. And it's, you're very blessed. Obviously, you're very lucky to, be around here right now having that disease. Sorry, what was it called?
Guillain-Barré. It's an
Oh, all
autoimmune,
right.
yeah, GBS, yeah.
Yeah, we read it in the differential diagnosis of polio, but it never happens. We never see that because it's very rare, right?
It is. I'd say it's more rare in Pakistan. It's a bit more common, like in Caucasian populations. But yeah, in the end, it's an autoimmune disease. You get like an infection, or sometimes also it happens in response to certain vaccines. Like you get an infection, and then your body thinks that something related to the infection is still around and starts making antibodies against myelin. So it's very similar to multiple sclerosis, just that it's temporary rather than permanent. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, just looking at your story right now, I can honestly see, why you've come all this way, such a long journey and such a great journey, doing so much already. I can see that because your story of your beginning was so inspiring, mashallah. And I can see that, you're going to places, inshallah. But like, I honestly, I'm pretty sure I'm going to see your name, doing big things in future, having a bigger name than right now that you have. And alhamdulillah, it's going to happen. I can see that. Thank you so much for, sharing that. My second question is about the thing that you're actually, becoming famous for day and day, right? And that is your dementia research. So tell us about that. Tell us about why, what's the whole dementia research is about, and why is it such a game changer?
Yeah. Okay. So again, like I think, I always see things that, everything is like a learning curve, and frankly, like, when I published this paper, it got picked up by, some of the media, the Pakistan, like Mango Buzz and all of that. And because, I mean, of course, like they're proud that somebody from Pakistan is doing that. But at the same time, like, I don't think game changer is the right word. I think we have unfolded a pathway which has potential for further exploration. But I would call like a therapy a game changer when we are able to actually completely reverse the damage which we see. Right. I mean, so with this therapy, we don't see that, like I have to be very honest that I think it is something which is new. It is something which definitely has improved the standard treatment of care, but it is not a game changer by any means. But I can tell you a little bit about how we found that. So, so I was doing research mainly on how long-term memory formation happens, and we used, samples from postmortem tissue, of dementia patients. And then also we were studying the things in mice, because that's where you can actually explore the pathways which are involved. That was actually my PhD thesis, So we found out a new pathway of these molecules called microRNAs. So they regulate gene expression. And we discovered a particular cluster. And then we found something very interesting that, when these microRNAs are absent, the mice, they're not able to form long-term memories properly. They do form short-term memories, but the consolidation doesn't occur. So then we were like, okay, if this is what has happened in normal physiology, then maybe this is something which is downstream of all these dementia illnesses, where, in Alzheimer's disease, there is pathological aggregation of this beta amyloid and some other disease, there are other proteins which are involved. So we were like, okay, let's see if this pathway links the impairment of memory, you see. And it turned out that in frontotemporal dementia, a particular kind of dementia, which is the second most common after Alzheimer's disease, we actually saw that this pathway is involved. And then what we did initially was that in mice, you have direct access to the hippocampus. In humans, it's difficult to inject directly into the hippocampus because it's very much in the center of the brain. So you would damage a lot of things along the way. But in mice, when we injected these microRNAs, then we saw that no matter which disease they have, when these microRNA levels are replenished, their memory improves. So it means that it is actually a very prominent pathway, of this long-term memory formation. So then we found, okay, what can we do in humans, because we cannot, of course, inject these microRNAs in the brain. So now we are finding ways in which these microRNAs can be injected in the periphery, and they find their way and only affect the brain. And they are not they're able to cross the blood-brain barrier, only affect the hippocampus, the memory part, without side effects anywhere. So this is something which is ongoing. But we already found a couple of ways in which these microRNAs can be enhanced. One is called environmental enrichment. So basically, this is multimodality stimulation. It can be done through, we call it transcranial magnetic stimulation, in which, you can use basically like a magnet, and the electromagnetic field, it specifically activates certain neurons. So that is one way in which these microRNAs can
like
be,
Professor Charles Xavier.
Exactly. Yes, something like that. Yeah. Not exactly, but something like that. Yeah. And the other way is that, just by having an enriching environment. So basically, you activate different parts of the brain simultaneously. I'll give you a simple example, which we are now also using, in different forms in dementia patients. For example, if you've ever experienced virtual reality, that's a very immersive environment in which you can activate different sensations at the same time. So if we make the patients do these different stimulation exercises in virtual reality, then we actually see that the memory can be slightly improved because these microRNAs are enhanced. And finally, there's also actually a natural product. It's called bacofamonire. And when we tested in the drug, then this natural product also increases these microRNAs specifically in neurons. So now we are using a combination of all these things, wherever available. Of course, virtual reality cannot be done everywhere, but at least the supplement and all of that, we are using it on our patients. And I would say that there has been definitely a mild improvement. And hopefully, after further refinement, we can eventually go to something which will be a game changer.
Right. So, you've been mentioning that's, the basic unit, that's, the whole, essence of the pathway, right? The micron. So can we prepare synthetic microns that could, work like that, and, maybe, we can inject synthetic, and make that pathway go on and on and on. So, improving, can that happen?
This is what we are doing actually right now. We can make these microRNAs synthetically. Now, the thing is that, again, it's all about finding a way in which patients can also take it, right? Because in humans, if we inject everything into into hippocampus, it will be a very complicated surgery, and then you will destroy a lot of tissue along the way. So we need an access which is more in a natural way. You inject it in the periphery, intravenously, and then it crosses the blood-brain barrier and reaches, hippocampus and only stimulates there. So that is where the challenge is. But I'm I'm collaborating also with some people who are working more on drug discovery and targeting to refine it in a way that it only reaches there. I would say hopefully, inshallah, in a couple of years, we might be able to, sort of crack the code for that.
That is just beautiful because and just like you said, it's a very big challenge because if you inject something intravenously, then it has to pass through your body, through the whole circulation, and then it has to cross the blood-brain barrier. And in this whole pathway, it has to, a lot of things can cross-react, right? It can go into different tissues. To just target it to go to the hippocampus is such a feat in itself. And I
Yeah,
believe, having people like you on board, we can definitely do that. And inshallah, we will do that. So
hopefully,
thank you so
hopefully,
much
yeah.
for explaining it explicitly. Um, that is just great. What do you think, after years down the road, and inshallah, once we do that, because, human race is always obviously progressing. Once we're able to do that, what do you think, your research and your work, what other aspects does it have? What other outcomes can it have?
Yeah, so I'm working on multiple topics because again, I'm a big believer that actually, whatever happens in our environment or in our life, it is shaping up the even the phenotype, the characteristics, the functioning of different parts of our brain. So, for example, a lot of these diseases, these susceptibilities, they are present even from our childhood, or even sometimes they're not even based on our experiences, but the experiences of our parents. So this is another line which I'm working, in which we look at the long-term effects of early life trauma and how does it lead to disease susceptibility. And these diseases, they range from depression to personality disorders to eventually more neurological illnesses like dementia, and where we can intervene early enough to stop the process. And it's actually called epigenetics. That's a fairly commonly used term, but again, not a lot of people really know what epigenetics is. So epigenetics, it's very famous actually on Instagram. You would see a lot of influencers talk about it, but they think epigenetics means, essential oils and natural herbs. I mean, yes, true, but eventually epigenetics is any kind of influence of environment which can shape the way our genes are expressed, and we all know high school sort of biology that genes, that there's this coding, right? This
We know the mutations.
exactly mutations, and there is the sequence. Now epigenetics is something in which the sequence is not altered, but the way it is expressed is altered. Eventually we are made of proteins, right? So in the way the proteins are shaped can be altered by these environmental inputs or life experiences, and that's where we actually need to understand things better so that we can intervene enough. I'll just give you a very brief example that I'm collaborating also with the SOS Village in Pakistan and elsewhere in the world for that, and we are looking at children who unfortunately lose their parents early or undergo something else traumatic early in life. We see that they become more anxious. They have more addictions. They become more depressed, unfortunately, in adulthood. So how can we intervene? What is the mediating factor? And what we found out was that these children, although they are malnourished, when we look at their metabolic pathways, we see that they have low levels of HDL, the high density lipoprotein, the good kind of cholesterol. They have
The good
less,
cholesterol.
yeah, they have less levels of good cholesterol. And actually we saw a correlation that, the lesser the levels of HDL are, the higher are their depressive symptoms. And then when you supplement them with HDL, we see that their depression starts going down. So, this is what we need to understand so that we identify the pathways and we intervene early enough rather than later on. They can always, of course, eventually go to a psychiatrist, but after losing so many precious years. So,
Wow, that is really great. Especially you're working with DSS Village because they have this is what actually creating impact. My next question to you is about the listeners listening to you right now, and it is if I were to ask you to give me specific advice to win at life, both personally and professionally, what would you say?
sorry, I missed the part. Advice about what? Sorry.
advice about, winning at life, both personally and professionally?
I mean, I would say that, again, it's important to know, like, what your eventual goals are, you know, like, I think, like, I always, it's funny, like, now I have like nieces and nephews who are very young, and I always tell them that, it's important to win, but it's also important to accept your defeat, accept it graciously, accept it, like, without actually feeling that, there you are nothing less. So I would sort of give my advice more in terms of how you should try to live your life so that you have an impact, and this is something which also I usually like to, tell my students, like, if it's a mentorship session, that it's important to always think of, I call it 5 C's. I'm actually like, I have a mentorship program here in Europe, also based on it. And it's always like, whatever you do it with curiosity, do it with compassion, do it with credibility, do it with creativity, and do it with collaboration. So basically, learn to work on things which are novel, approach things in an out of the box way, with the help of, like, people, be in a team, even if you are a leader, you have to be an empowering leader, and eventually whatever you do, people should find it credible. Like, people, if someone, like, for me, what's most important is that, like, whatever I discover in science, I don't want to be the only one doing that. What I want is that whatever I did, you know, let's say a lab in Brazil or, Bangladesh, whatever, they try the same and they reach the same outcome because it's based on knowledge. It's not based on some kind of, like, personality magic or voodoo. So again, things have to be, like, done in a way that they are believable and they can be reproduced. So this is I think how I like to see it. And again, just adding the last part, I think you're a true leader, not if you have like a million followers, but if eventually you can leave a number of handful leaders behind you. So you have to learn how not to lead, but also how to empower, others.
That is just so true. Thank you, Dr. for this. My next question is a question that puts my guests into existential crisis a lot of times, and that is, what has been
Sorry.
your
Yeah.
biggest failure in life, and what did you learn out of it?
Biggest failure in life. I mean, I think there have been numerous failures, to be honest. And a lot of times things are just not in your control, right? And like I had this tendency, I would say when I was younger, to never give up. And I thought that was like my best quality. And actually I realized that, it's important to know also when to let go, you know? Like, because there's a fine line between being determined and being obsessive. And definitely any kind of obsession, like, it's not good for your own well-being. It's not even good for, like, if we generally think of our role in the universe, there will always be things which will be beyond your capacity, beyond your intellect. So I would say that, there were multiple things. I even, like, I had a remedial exam, for example, during medical school. Like, in the end, like, people, sort of, they talk to you and they think that you were brilliant at everything. I wasn't good in radiology. I remember, like, because, like, I'm a thinker, like I need my time to evaluate things, and I'm a thorough person. So if you put like an X-ray in front of me, I would take like 3 minutes to tell you what's going on. I'm not like one of these people who would be like, oh, this is like, I don't know, the tension pneumothorax or whatever. So I wasn't good in radiology. I actually had to repeat the rotation and that. And that actually helped me realize, what I'm cut out for. Like I'm like a thorough person. I can question things. I can sort of come up with innovative solutions to things, and that's my forte. You know, and I'm good in, like, I realized that I'm good in things like, for example, communicating. Being didactic. So I'm good with patients. I'm good with students, and then eventually I chose a path which is, let's say, which sort of includes all my strengths, all my fortes. And at the same time, wherever I was deficient, I tried to get myself to the baseline, so that if I look at an MRI, I take my time, but I reach eventually what I want to find out. So I think that experience definitely, that's one failure which taught me a lot. And then later on, like, in science, every day you have, like, you have to write grants, to get money to pay your PhD students and stuff. And a lot of times, they are rejected not because they don't believe in your science, but they actually think that, we need to be spending the money elsewhere. You know, for example, I last year I wrote a grant about this childhood trauma, and I sent it to a foundation in Switzerland, and they felt, well, like, we think that vaccinating children is more important than thinking about trauma, so we are giving it to another, like, researcher who is working on childhood vaccination, right? I mean, and that didn't mean that that my science and my idea was not correct. It just meant something else needed to be prioritized in their opinion. So, I mean, these failures they teach you how to sort of be creative, how to also accept that sometimes, no matter what you do, you know, you just have to face the defeat, with grace.
That is so true, and thank you so much for this insight. My next question is about something that I believe, especially in Pakistan, it's not talked about enough. It's not given the due attention it needs. I'm talking about mental health. So even if people talk about it, all the focus is on the problem itself. Nobody focuses on the solution. Nobody talks about, that we need to build a culture where it's okay to go to therapy. Just like you go to gym to, work out for your body, it's okay to go to therapy for your mind. And there's lots of stigmas attached to mental health. I want to know, what do you think about mental health, especially about Pakistan and the Desi culture that we have. What's your take into mental health?
Yeah, I would say that, it's not only actually in Pakistan. Like, I've been to other countries where I also see that, generally, it's the topic still remains, like, sort of like, this hush hush kind of a thing. Like, people don't like to talk about that they are going to therapists, even in the West. Then there is another side of it. The other side of it is, like, sort of like, these, I wouldn't say no, not necessarily the new generation, but the people who think that, they're very woke, right? They talk a lot about mental health, but actually in a very judgmental way, right?
Hmm.
And it's for example, now, like, people are starting to talk more about mental health, but mental health has many manifestations, right? I mean, mental health doesn't only mean burnout, right? Mental health doesn't only mean all these things which people are talking more about, but mental health can also mean things which are, like, let's say, in a social world, they really limit your interactions. For example, like, imagine someone, who has been through something very traumatic, right? I mean, imagine like children who get abused, right? Imagine like someone who's having 10 panic attacks a day. I mean, I think what we need to do is to, when we talk about mental health, be very holistic, you know? I mean, even for example, aggression is like a mental health issue, right? I mean, but you can't do your mental health in a way that you sort of like, are, let's say,
Paint
very,
it with the same brush.
yeah, like exactly, like, you can't be, like, it has to be like, the consistent, your way of supporting it, right? I mean, also a person who has a personality issue, who has attachment issues, who's paranoid, who's aggressive, these are also very common mental health issues. We also need to support them. We need to, like, help them realize that, this is affecting their own personality. Like, for me, even racism is a mental health issue. So we can't be like, we even have to reason and help and support racists to become more inclusive. This is the change I think we want to see. And in Pakistan, actually, we are in the very nascent stage. I mean, right now, like, I think, even for example, we have to start from the very basics and differentiate between panic attacks and schizophrenia and jadoo tona, And I think, like, there has to be like some kind of like a revolution, which is not only done in, like, these sort of woke and academic circles, but also by common people. I think what perhaps we also need to involve, like, people who know, like, more about the culture, anthropologists, religious leaders, and realize what kind of mental health issues which we are dealing with, and how we can sort of educate people in a way that they become like more, you know, it becomes more conducive to them and they start understanding it. I'll give you a little example. I don't know how much time you have, but like a very
We have like 30 minutes. Yeah,
okay,
it's okay.
okay. So so once I actually like I encountered this it was like a mother who was telling me about her daughter saying that ये बिल्कुल ठीक थी and फिर किसी ने जादू करवा दिया इसके ऊपर. And then I was like, okay, I tried to reason with her a little bit, but then I was like, she has her firm belief, so it's absolutely fine. I was like, okay, let's work on it in two ways. मैं आपको बताता हूँ कि आपने कौन सा इन्हें एंटीसाइकोटिक देना है, कौन से आपने लाइफस्टाइल चेंजेस करने हैं, और जादू के लिए जो दवा होती है आप वो करें. मेरी थेरेपी जो है उसमें ज़्यादा बरकत आएगी जब आप दवा भी करेंगी और उससे जादू भी खत्म हो जाएगा. And actually she was convinced, and then eventually she put the daughter on therapy, and within like half a year, the girl improved a lot. So again, I mean, she had her belief about Jadoo Tona, and I was like, I mean, I believe in the power of prayer. आप क्यों नहीं आप prayer करें उसके लिए, बिल्कुल बिल्कुल ठीक है. But साथ therapy भी दें, and therapy will become more effective, if you're praying.
I feel like it's a a two-edged sword. On one hand, we have the patients who have a firm belief, okay, in these kind of practices, and they paint the whole thing, every single issue with, jadoo ho gaya. And this is very prevalent in हमारे जो गाँव है उसमें बहुत ज़्यादा है. This is a fact. Even शहरों में भी ये चीज़ बहुत ज़्यादा होती है. So we have this one edge sword, and then we have the second edge, जहाँ पे even doctors, when they see something like this, they just build a lot of resistance towards it, and they bash them, and they don't so the thing is, I feel like it's towards being more respectful of what they believe in,
Yeah.
trying to make them understand, and if they don't, that's okay, respecting them and still making them understand and making them convinced that they need to give them the therapy that you're suggesting, and they can do whatever they want to do besides, because you cannot just
Absolutely.
fight their years of the certain belief that's just ingrained in their mind, right? And I feel like
Absolutely.
that's the whole thing. Doctors need to understand
Yeah.
this, and the patients need to understand this as well.
And we have to find like midways, and frankly, also like you have to understand where these things are coming from. I mean, these are associations which have been formed, and then you have to reshape those associations, right? For example, going back to this auntie. I mean, now if she saw that her daughter improved with therapy, then she will form an association कि मैंने दुआ भी की और मैंने ये वाली treatment भी use की, and like she got better, and eventually she will tell someone else कि इस doctor के पास जाओ या ये treatment use करो और साथ ये वाली दवा करो. So you're reshaping a whole culture, a whole belief system by doing that.
Exactly, that is so true. Just to like summarize it up, just to sum it up, what do you think? Like, what practical approach somebody needs to do? Because let's be very honest, like every single one of us goes through some sort of mental health issue while we grow up, right?
Absolutely.
For some people, it's very long. It takes years to get off of the issue. For some people, it's rather quickly. What do you have like a practical approach to how to approach that issue going on?
I think it's like there are things which we can do ourselves, and then there are things which we need to do as a community. I think one is that we need to the of course the literacy element will help, but also we need to have like sort of this revolution which is more spiritual, in the sense that we have to stop judging people. We have to make them feel more inclusive, and at the same time, what people need to do themselves is that they should understand that none of them makes them weak. A lot of times mental health issues, I mean, I don't even want to use the word issues, but whatever experiences we have, they become our strengths. And this is also something which it's not only fascinating from an academic point of view, but I also always tell people that when you experience, for example, something traumatic, there are two pathways which can occur naturally. One is that some people get PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and the other people, they get what we call post-traumatic growth, in which they just become more resilient, and they're able to face a stressful situation much better after that. So anything traumatic can also become your strength. It's about how you look at it, how you are able to make your perspective around it, how you turn it into more of a learning experience. And then later on, you will just see that you will become like, more altruistic, more resilient, and like, any situation like that, you will be able to deal much better. And I think this is something which we need to train ourselves about. And also that's where other people can really support you, you know. Um, like the way you support a person with mental health challenges is also important. I always tell people that, if you come across someone who's depressed or who's suicidal, you know, you don't tell them that, hey, look forward to life, or like, hey, look like how important life is, or sab theek ho jayega. I mean, like when you say these things, what the other person believes is that, he or she is saying that because everything is great around them, and look at me, and there is nothing, So you have to also make them feel wanted. You have to tell them that, you know, your life or your opinions or like, what you're doing matters to me, rather than, supporting with this level of like superiority.
That is just very insightful. Thank you so much, Dr. Ali, for that. My next question, since you're an expert and, it's highly important for me to, invite experts in the health show. Um, if you could give the listeners just three key insights to, a better diet, to a better sleep routine and a better exercise routine, what would you say?
Yeah. So I would say that, like, again, you have to understand like what is the best for you in terms of like, especially when we talk about sleep. I mean, there are certain people who like, who will be night owls because that's the time they're most productive. And it is absolutely fine to stick to your routine, So I'm never going to be somebody who will advise that, okay, you sleep like, at 9 p.m. and wake up at 5 a.m. No, that's in the end, it's about, the quality of the
Individualized,
sleep.
yeah.
Yeah, it's individualized, and it's also about the quality of the sleep. You don't have to think about, okay, I have to sleep 8 hours or 9 hours or 7 hours or whatever. You have to think about when you sleep, is it a sound sleep? And when you wake up, are you refreshed or not? You know, Again, I'll give you an example. In depression, we see like, a lot of times that people sleep a lot, right? But they are not refreshed after they wake up. So this is something which you always have to question. Okay, if if you don't feel refreshed on waking up, what is it? Is it something to do with like, the posture? Were you distracted? Were you anxious? Like, and then you have to work on these factors. But one thing which I definitely, I have been guilty of, but I'm trying to slowly remove that, is it's important not to keep the cell phone right next to you. I mean, we know, like, also there is enough scientific evidence to suggest that, it definitely impairs the quality of sleep. Now, in terms of diet, again, like, it's about being healthy, staying in your, the BMI bracket, which is good for you. And then like it really doesn't matter which particular diet you follow, as long as you know that, you have like certain gap between meals, I mean, like, for example, like I'm very much against this, the 3 meals जो हम follow करते हैं, there's just not enough gap. I mean, I think like, so of course, like it is, we have to look at the historical perspective. I mean, the reason we had breakfast and then we had lunch was because this is when humans used to be most productive physically, you know. There were farmers, there were like, like people working in like, I don't know, there were warriors, there were all kind of people who
A
would,
lot of physical
you know,
exertion.
there was a lot of physical exertion. Now we don't have that kind of physical exertion. So either you go back to having 2 meals, right? Or you have to have like an 8 hour gap between your meals. Now the problem with that would be then your dinner would be too late and there won't be enough gap between your sleep. So what I follow myself, for example, is just like 2 meals during the day, and then you can, have like a healthy snack in between. So that's the thing about the diet. And for exercise, just like even if you can do it for half an hour every day, like no matter what you want to do, aerobic or like weight training, whatever, just half an hour, it will make a huge difference in terms of your mental health. Because, no matter how we exert, whether we do weight training, whether we run, whether we do aerobics, we always release endorphins. The release starts 15 minutes after we start the exercise. And endorphins would definitely have a very beneficial effect on your anxiety or depression or anything like that.
That is absolutely great. And I feel like just to sum it up, just to cap it all, I feel like if it needs to be simple and it needs to be consistent, even if it's just something small that you're doing. You have to do it every day.
Absolutely.
You have to be consistent, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's also like when I advise someone, I make sure that it's something which is easy for them to incorporate in their lifestyle, because
Something that
what
they
would
enjoy.
exactly that they enjoy, and something which doesn't become a burden. Once exercise starts becoming a burden, you will never do it.
Exactly, that's super true. My next question is the most exciting question of this show, and that is, Dr. Ali, if you had the time, energy, and all the money in this world to do anything to keep yourself healthy, what would you do?
Well, that's I think
That's like
it's
a
a
lot of
very
wishful
interesting
thinking.
one. Yeah. Okay, time and money and like wow. I don't know. I think I would love to be a part of like a community where all these things which we talked about are practiced and also encouraged and implemented. Like just a community where there is like more positivity, where actually there is more focus on prevention of things, where mental health is taught as a curriculum. Frankly, I'm also like very much interested in geopolitics and the way things are shaping up in New Zealand. I was like, sometimes I think, maybe I should move and start living there. They actually have a mental health curriculum. They teach about mental health in schools. um,
Wow.
they when people do their jobs over there, there is like a dedicated time to exercise every day. There are people training you for that, and they actually are showing that this leads to increased productivity. And another very important thing about which I found out about their economy is that they do things in a way that they do. There's this 10x rule basically. So so if you work in a corporate, the person who gets the least salary versus the person who gets the maximum salary cannot be more than 10 folds of that. So if there's a big corporate and the cleaning lady is getting $2,000 a month, then the CEO of the company can get maximum 20,000. And I think this sort of, there is still a margin of capitalism there, but then at the same time, there's this level of equality, in which, the class difference is not so huge. I would love to actually one day be a part of a community like that and just contribute. So,
Wow, what you just mentioned, this is big, this is huge. I'm actually surprised how is this is even happening in the world right now. I mean, seeing all the capitalism, seeing all the politics, seeing all the corruption going on everywhere around the world. This is like, extraordinary. This is, something impossible to believe that can happen. But that is amazing. And that is obviously why New Zealand is, going, straight ahead up the curve. My next question to you is, how do you keep yourself healthy, both physically and mentally? You've talked about it a little bit right now. And how can our listeners keep themselves healthy as well? What can they incorporate in their daily lives that's just not a big of a hassle, but they can do it every day?
yeah. So, I mean, I actually, I think I need to even improve on my work-life balance because I'm definitely a workaholic. And I feel like I need to have like a bit more time devoted to like my other passions, which sometimes I neglect. But I think the important thing, which I realized over time, is that as long as I'm not panicking, as long as I'm not anxious, and as long as I can keep my composure, then I don't get tired. And then even like any challenge which I face, it becomes easier to handle. So there are like two or three things which I learned along the way, which I follow. One is that I do take omega-3 supplements. I think they definitely help a lot. The other thing is that I try to be very aware of what's going on around me, and sort of mindfulness, utilizing my sensations to the fullest. Like for example, right now when I'm talking to you and I'm sipping my coffee, like literally this is where my focus is. I'm looking at like each and everything which is happening right now. So I'm talking to you, and then there's this music playing in the background in the coffee shop I'm sitting, and I'm trying to, I try to activate my senses And what as a byproduct of that, the part of your brain which is constantly under some kind of worry, or it's like is planning, or is like being anxious about something, that gets shut off. And even if that is something which has happened momentarily, it kind of cools down the process which is happening in the background. And I think it's very important to be mindful. It also helps a lot with the concentration. So for me, being like practicing mindfulness and omega-3, these things have helped a lot. The third thing is like, if you want to stimulate new neurons in your brain, which actually now we know that that's the process that is going on until old age, the best way you can do that is by seeking novelty, So trying out new things, whether it requires like traveling and exploring new places or working on something new, like I've never been like a person who was, technologically very sound. I mean, my brother is an engineer and he's super cool, but I was always like, no, I'm a thinker. For me, it's medicine, biology, whatever. But recently I found this new like hobby in which, I fly drones, and like, whenever
Oh,
I'm
wow.
traveling, I go to a lake or whatever. So I assembled my drone, I learned something new, and I felt how, it starts sort of made me like so much more positive and happier. So just trying out new things, to go exploring new places, it does stimulate like new neurons in your brain.
Wow, that is just amazing. And point number two that you just mentioned, being mindful. Do you do like some form of a meditation, a guided meditation, or do you do that? And if you do, like, can you like explain it to us so like people can incorporate that as well?
Yeah. So I was actually thinking of once like making like a vlog or something like that, and that maybe we could do it together. Actually, so there is one exercise which I find very helpful. It involves like sequentially contracting and relaxing the different muscles of your body. So you lie down and you start breathing. We call it breathing like eight, in which you inhale, you breathe in for 4 seconds, then you hold the breath for 4 seconds more, and then you breathe out. So you're holding the breath for like a considerable amount of time. So you breathe like that, and then you contract and relax, four different muscle groups. You start with your feet, then your thighs, then your belly, and eventually your chest and your shoulders. And once you like, when you start doing that, you will already feel like that your body is going into a very relaxed posture. And eventually, in the end, I just close my eyes and I try to visualize, with my eyes closed, where I am and whatever I am experiencing, right? So if you're in your room and the window is open, you think about, okay, I'm lying down there peacefully. I can actually feel the breeze coming in. I can actually, maybe smell the scent of like the tree or the flowers outside. And right now the temperature is this much. It makes me feel relaxed. It makes me feel good. And like, you do it for a bit. Eventually, though, it's so calming that you just fall asleep. You drift into sleep after that. But even if not, you will realize that after that, your mind will be, as if it has been restarted. So that's something which I find very helpful.
Wow. So just to like, sum it up. So you start contracting all your basic, group of muscles after the whole, one respiratory cycle, or do you do it like, exactly the same time while you're inhaling the air, and that's how you contract the air. So when
So
does it happen?
I start with breathing, and after breathing, I do this contraction and relaxation. So again, it's important to contract but then relax. If you keep them contracted, but then it's not helpful. And then afterwards, I do the mindfulness. But eventually, you are able to train yourself in a way that you can do all of this simultaneously. That you will be doing the mindfulness, but still you will be able to breathe in the same way. But in the beginning, you can do it step by step until your body gets used to it.
Wow, I'm actually gonna do this tonight, inshallah. I do meditation every single day. I when I work out in the morning, I wake up. I'm a morning person, so I wake up and I do my workout, and then I start my meditation, and I prime myself for the whole day. Right? I do the breathing technique, but it's not the one that you just mentioned. But I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna try this, and I'm gonna tell you the results. While we were having this conversation, this thing just sort of popped up into my mind, and I want to ask you that. And I'm genuinely very interested in psychedelics, not from an addiction point of view, but from the how it stimulates your brain, how it stimulates the neurons, and how it can take you to places, right? Not just spiritually, not just mentally and everything.
Yeah.
What do you think about psychedelics? What do you think about microdosing and all of that?
I mean, the thing is that any kind of you have to realize that our brain is designed in a way that nature allowed us some natural addictions. It's very like I don't want to sound controversial, but nature actually did allow us some addictions. For example, like if you think about the amount of oxytocin which is released when you talk to your mother, or the amount of oxytocin which is released when you listen to music you like, you know, it is not the same level as psychedelics, but it is prominent. You're able to detect it, and this is why we become addicted to these things. This is why, like, sometimes you feel the need to talk to your loved one. You become, like, love is a form of addiction in a way. Or like, how many times you like a song and you put it on repeat mode, right? So when nature has allowed us these addictions, there is really no need to explore further. And the important thing is to not form these unhealthy associations. When I talk to young people, I always tell them that the problem is not going to parties, because in the end you're looking for social interaction and connection and thrill, which is absolutely fine. The problem is that you form this association with the pills. So you can really party without the pill. You don't need that. It is just enhancing something which is naturally inside of you. So my, like, very strong belief about all these things is that like anything which is abnormally addicted, we don't need that, because we have natural addictions which we can just supplement and replace those abnormal addictions with. But the important thing is that also we need to see the long-term effects of, like, all these things. For microdosing, I don't think there is enough evidence to prove that it is completely safe. What I can tell you is what safe is, and what's also given in a lot of routine practices now in Europe, is CBD. So we know that CBD, you take the bad component out, you take the THC out, and CBD on its own, it's not harmful. It is mildly addictive, but it's not really addictive. At the same time, it does help a lot in pain relief, in anxiety, and in insomnia. So I think when other things are not working, I think CBD can definitely be tried out. And again, like, it's something which is less addictive, let's say, compared to benzodiazepines. So if someone is facing severe insomnia and nothing is working, perhaps it's better for them to take CBD rather than taking benzodiazepines.
Exactly. Before I move on to my last question, I just want to ask, like, do you like, obviously your research and what you're doing right now is changing a lot of, is opening up a lot of avenues for science. Do you think it has impactful effects on Parkinson's disease and in the treatment and management of Alzheimer's disease?
Yeah, so definitely, that's something which like, it's a project which we are working on. It's in the pipeline. It's also about so when you think about a disease, there are two components of any dementia illness, like be it Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. One is what triggers this let's say sickness of neurons, and then second is the manifestations, right? So in Alzheimer's disease, for example, there is buildup of this beta amyloid and this tau, these two, let's call them the bad proteins, in layman terminology. And then these bad toxic proteins, they lead to neuronal death and synaptic dysfunction. And that is what is causing the cognitive symptoms, right? So there are two ways we have to approach this disease. One is to how we can improve those cognitive symptoms, where, my previous research, what you were talking about, helps. And the other is how to stop buildup of these proteins. So I'm also, like, working on another project in which we are using metabolic interventions to stop the buildup of these toxic proteins, or to enhance their removal by microglia, the immune cells in the brain. So that is something which like, we are also working on, and hopefully, like, inshallah, like, again, within the next 2 to 3 years, we do expect to refine this pathway enough that we'll be able to make a difference there.
That is just amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Ali. My final question to you is, what is that one thing you want to leave the audience with tonight?
I think, like, if there is one thing which I always feel that, if someone asks me that what is one thing you want to change in the world, I would say negativity. And once, because that is the biggest blocker, I mean, I think negativity is a blocker which is bigger than, like, I don't know, poverty and illiteracy or whatever, because, in the end, like, once you learn how to be positive, you will be able to utilize your resources in a way that you can definitely improve your life. Once you learn how to stop being negative, you will also start, you will stop competing with others, and rather you will start, like, empowering others and, like, working with them to build your community, right? And I think this is something which I would like to convey to anyone who's listening, that, if you are negative, there is no reason to judge yourself, but just try to understand that it eventually is not even going to be good for you. So find ways in which, you can lessen it somehow.
Great. Thank you so very much, Dr. Ali Javed, for giving me time to come up with this show and to share your experiences. This has been a very insightful conversation that we just had for the past hour, and I'm so happy. I'm so glad to have you here. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much. I wish and I want you to have another session with me sometime in future.
Thank you, absolutely. I think I also, like, really liked your questions. I think the way you envisioned those, it was clear that you want yourself to learn, you want others to learn, and you want that even our conversation. I like that it was perhaps, like, a little bit also about my experiences, but also about how others can benefit from that. So I thoroughly enjoyed this, and yeah, all the best. Keep going.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and I hope to meet you one day, inshallah.
Absolutely,
Thank you.
inshallah, definitely. All right.
Have a
Bye-bye.
nice day. Thank you. And
You too.
Hafiz.
Bye. Hafiz.